Hello viewers, you're welcome to another news hour on Jamano Media and Products. We first begin with our headlines. Speaker Fabakary Tombong says he still wants Gambia back. Nominated Member of Parliament calls for reconciliation among Gambians. Gambia Press Union condemns verbal attack on journalist Panderi Toure. Those were the headlines. We now have the news in detail. The new Speaker of the National Assembly, Fabakary Tombong, has said he still believes former President Yahya Jammeh should come back and be accorded to all the privileges of a former head of state. He still believes Jammeh should come back. This is not just about Jammeh, but every other future president. It is wrong to exercise revenge or humiliate our former president for the mistakes they made, Fabakary Tombong told BBC Focus on Africa's Omar Wali. The leader of Jammeh's former ruling APRC added he has been an advocate since he became a parliamentarian in 1996, especially all the Pan-African and ECOWAS parliaments, that Africa must revisit the way they treated our former presidents. These issues of revenge and humiliation of our ex-presidents for the mistakes they made is responsible for their refusal to hand over power. Fabakary Tombong said Jammeh decided to break away from his team, but it was never his intention to break away from the former leader. The former majority leader on the Jammeh's parliament added there is a lot of partisan politicians in the National Assembly to the extent that they compromise the supreme interest of the people. His first task will be to try and shape the mindsets of the members so that Gambia's interest takes precedence in all the work they do. He believed that when they are elected or nominated to the parliament, they should deal with the matters of the nation and avoid our religious, tribe or regional bias influencing our decisions. Reacting to critics who claim he should not be at the National Assembly given his past political records, Fabakary Tombong urged that his nomination is based on his competence and experience in the National Assembly. And for President Adama Barrow, he has never been our enemy but a political opponent, he said. He have no regret in campaigning against the rejected draft constitution, but he have a quaff coming up with a new constitution or amending the 1997 constitution. But if the rejected constitution returns to the assembly, he will campaign against it because it is not the interest of the country, he said. Fabakary Tombong continued to say, since the rejected draft has a number of clauses that his party believes should not be in it, there are a lot of contradictions and provisions that are aimed at struggling the leadership. Constitutions are not meant to suit individuals and groups. They are petition the Constitutional Review Commission to review and give us feedback on those clauses that they did not, he said. Fabakary Tombong also said he still believes that the APRC should have been given the opportunity to challenge the 2016 presidential election. The claim that they were not having judges is not true because they had 5 at the time. The Chief Justice, 3 from Nigeria and a Sierra Leonean. It was easier to bring those judges to decide on the case than bringing arms from all over the world to come and attack the Gambia. It is our right to go to court. He believed that they are full play in the election. That is why they never wanted them to go to court, he said. Mr. Jatta said he was never against President Adama Barrow as an individual but the government. Since he met President Adama Barrow, his perception about him changed because the APRC has pledged to be an opposition with a difference. They will never undermine his government and he will do everything possible to make sure that his development projects are given priority. But they will also not relent on ensuring that government funds are spent judicially. He will not be a stooge for President Adama Barrow or anybody else, he said. The speaker also said that if President Adama Barrow works closely with the APRC, they will take the Kanifi mayoral seat from the UDP next year. He will challenge Unda Nyang and all the leadership of the NPP in Kanifi municipality to work on unifying all the supporters in the area to make sure that they prepare for the mayoral election, he said. Maimuna Sise Dabo, nominated National Assembly member, has called for reconciliation among Gambians with political differences. Speaking exclusively with The Voice, she said the National People's Party National Assembly members are willing and ready to work with other National Assembly members in the Parliament. They like to work with the National Assembly members and for them also to understand that this annex is not for party politics but for national development and better politics. Let's leave all party politics outside the annex and focus on Gambia, she urged other members. She went on that we expect that Gambians are willing to work with us. For that being the case, they selected you out of the rest to represent them at the National Assembly, and for the past 5 years the country has been immersed with the speeches and abusive languages. Reconciliation should be the first priority for the National Assembly. She continued that Gambians need sensitization on the female representative because these last parliamentary elections, she have her own take and have few women that contested. They tried their franchise, which is a constitutional mandate to them. Unfortunately, only 3 were successfully to make it through the National Assembly. The Gambia Press Union has condemned the verbal attack on the person of journalist Panderi Toure of Star FM Radio and said comments made by Usainu Dabo, the leader of the United Democratic Party, describing the Star FM talk show host as someone who dislikes his party and members of the Mandinka ethnic group, was unnecessary and unwarranted from a political leader. The GPU said they condemn in the strongest terms the action of the United Democratic Party leader and urge all other politicians and leaders of political parties to desist from such rhetoric that can incite their supporters to order physical or verbal assault journalists or targeted them. Mr. Dabo also accused journalist Panderi Toure of trying to cause diversions in his United Democratic Party as he addressed new United Democratic Party National Assembly members at his house along Kairaba Avenue on Friday, April 15, 2022. The Gambia Press Union condemns in the strongest terms the actions of the United Democratic leader Usainu Dabo and all other oppositions and all other politicians are being urged to desist from such rhetoric targeted at journalists because they incite their supporters to either physically or verbally assault journalists. In recent years, the Gambia Press Union has observed and documented a disturbing trend of political rhetoric from political leaders, with others accusing journalists or certain media houses of bias and unfavorable coverages, a stark reminder of how the dictatorship of former President Yahya Jammeh gradually started its onslaught against the media. Over the last 5 years, a good number of physical and verbal assaults on journalists and media professionals, recorded in more than 15 incidents, were perpetrated by politicians and their supporters with impunity. To avoid these attacks on journalists, the Gambia Press Union has been engaging politicians on an annual basis to discuss the safety of journalists covering and reporting on the activities of their political parties. The latest of these engagements was held just last month on March 11th and attended by participants from registered political parties and independent candidates. The Gambia Press Union is urging politicians to lead by example in promoting and protecting journalists from verbal attacks that are likely to expose them to further attacks. Physically, GPU President Muhammad Esba said. Political party leaders have a responsibility to protect journalists from attacks and must not be seen to be the instigators of verbal or physical attacks against journalists. The Gambia Press Union also urged journalists to respect and uphold their code of conduct and to remain apolitical and avoid any form of bias or other unethical practices that may likely expose them to further risks. Those were the stories for today's newscast. But before we take a leave, let's take a recap on our top stories. Speaker Fabakary Tombong Jatta says he still wants Gambia back. Nominated Member of Parliament calls for reconciliation among Gambians. Gambia Press Union condemns verbal attack on journalist Panderi Toure. Those were the stories for our today's newscast. Thank you for joining us with your presenter Mariama Gillen. Do have a nice day.